Hello, you beautiful people. So in this video, I'm going to share with you, and I want to speak to the Christian who is quiet. You may feel overlooked. You may feel like you're in a time of obscurity. And you may feel like a lot of what you do is behind the scenes, and you're wondering, does it even matter to the Father? Does it matter to people? Because it doesn't seem to be acknowledged. If that's you, then I want to speak to you in this video. Now, I've just finished hanging out a load of washing, and for those of you who know, I love to hang out washing because it's therapeutic, and this is where I have some of the most epic conversations with Jesus. And so while I was hanging out this washing, this conversation was going through my head. And so this is to you. This is for the Christian who does feel like you are the quiet type. And you may not necessarily just be quiet in nature, but also quiet in the sense that there may be a lot of things that you're doing behind the scenes that nobody else ever sees. Sorry. And maybe you could wonder, is my worship of any value? And the way that I love people behind the scenes, is that of any value? And maybe you wonder, like, is my faith of any value because it's not as passionate as others, or it doesn't seem as passionate as others? And if that's you, then this conversation will be really helpful for you. And I'm going to share with you three things, three pieces of advice, three truths that are going to be very helpful. I particularly think that number three is going to be the best for you. And I'm really happy to have this conversation because I've been in this position before. I have been the guy, particularly in my early years, where for 20 years I live a certain way. I come into this new reality of faith. I learn this new way of thinking. And now this grid gets framed up to me of what a good, awesome, amazing, powerful, great man of God, woman of God is. And so many times that grid looks like a certain way. And it looks like being loud. It looks like being animated. It looks like being charismatic. Often it looks like being popular, having your name known. You maybe have great followers or a big following. But often it looks like a certain way. And that was the grid that was set up for me. And this grid often comes from performance Christianity, which has just absorbed a whole lot of popularity culture. And so many times we have unknowingly shaped and then absorbed this belief that in order to be a good, strong, powerful man of God or woman of God, this is what it must look like. And so then what happens then if your journey with Jesus doesn't look like that? Or at least doesn't look like that in that season? Does that mean you're lesser? Does it mean you're not a powerful woman of God? These are all questions that I had to go through, particularly in my early stages of my faith. So obviously I don't live there anymore. I'm just speaking to it. But I know the wrestle that can go on through that. And so many times I would question and wonder, like, is there anything I'm missing? And I don't feel like I'm as loud and animated, as passionate as some of those guys are. And so many times I felt like I had to change who I was to try and appear passionate in that way. And so I would talk louder, and when I was in like groups or crowds of people, I would try to crack jokes and try to be funny and try to be like, hey, yeah, and really like talk. But I would come away so drained, so tired and exhausted because I'm not naturally like that. That is not the way I'm designed. I like to actually just sit and listen and observe and be quiet. And I like to take in and learn. And I like to listen before I speak. I like to understand things before I just say things. And so I would come away from these places feeling so exhausted because I was trying to be somebody that I thought that I had to be in order to be a passionate Christian. But the only reason why I thought that is because of the grid that performance Christianity and religion has set up for us. And so that has not only caused people to feel like they have to pursue a certain thing or try and be a certain way, only to lead to burnout and frustration, but at the same time, it's like a two-edged sword. It has demonized those who maybe don't look like that. And so this is why I want to speak to those of you as believers, as Christians, who are more quiet, who are more unassuming, who are maybe even often overlooked. Maybe you're in a time of obscurity. I want to say that, number one, God sees you, heaven sees you, and that there's nothing wrong with the way that you were designed and your current season in this place. Some of the most powerful people I know are also some of the most unassuming people you would ever meet. You'd see them, you won't know their name, you won't know anything that they did, there won't be too much about them, but then you sit with them for 5 minutes and you hear Jesus in their voice, you see Jesus in their eyes, and you feel Jesus in your presence, and you know this person's been with Jesus, and this is a powerful person that I'm sitting with. And it reminds me of the book of Acts when they said about the disciples, these were uneducated men, but they knew they had been with Jesus. And so these are people who often don't fit the framework or standard that popularity culture, performance Christianity, and religion has set up. And many times they are more quiet and unassuming and even overlooked. But I can promise you, they are some of the most powerful people. And they carry a weight in the kingdom that many times I think is missed, even for those who are in the more out there, outgoing thing. Now, I'm not bidding the two against each other. All I'm saying is that we have created these two divides. I'm saying there is no divide, whether you are in the openness or whether you're in the more quietness. Either way, heaven sees both, God sees both, and there is times and seasons for both, and there are lanes that we each to walk out in those places, and that it's all about walking before Him most of all. And so I want to speak to this. I want to share with you 3 pieces of advice that have been very helpful for me. But where I'm going to do that is I'm going to take you to one of my favorite spots here. This is a place that I've been going for 15 years. It's a very special place to me. In those early days, 15 years ago, because I'd just come to faith, and like I said earlier, 20 years I'd lived a certain way and only saw and thought a certain way. Had this out-of-body experience, encountered this guy named Jesus, and now it's like this whole new reality opened up. And so how do you make that shift? It's not a quick shift. It's not just this instant, I think this way, now I think this way. It's this process of letting go of old, shedding way of old, and then embracing this new, walking it out, and it can be very messy. And so this place where I'm going to take you, I've been going there for 15 years, and this is a place where I've had many wrestles. I've had many conversations with the Father. I've experienced many revelations and insights, and it's just been such a special and tender place to me, and it's a very sacred place. So I'm happy to share this with you, so I'll bring you along. All right, here we are. I will flip you around, and you're going to see the spot. So you can see why I love this place. Over here, that's Mana Island. It's one of the islands down here. Big drop. This is a straight drop down there, so you've got to be careful. Over there you can see just a silhouette of the South Island of New Zealand, and then behind me this is all Aurora, but this is my spot. And so this is where I come and just sit and be, and I usually just plonk a little spot around here. I've got my camp chair at the moment, and so I'm very happy to share this spot with you, and you can see why I love being here. So you can see why I really enjoy it here. But anyway, here are 3 pieces of advice for the quiet Christian, the unassuming Christian, and the Christian who is overlooked. The first thing I want to say is that passion isn't always loud, and loud isn't always passion. I learned this early on in my personal training journey. So I was a personal trainer for over a decade, and I'm not loud. So I don't raise my voice. I don't like to shout. I'm more quietly spoken. And when you compare that with majority of trainers today who are very loud, I can look like somebody who doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, or he doesn't know what to do. And so for the first year in my personal training journey, that's what a lot of potential clients thought. They would go and they were more attracted to the louder personal trainers, which is fair enough. And many times that would upset me because I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I could do, but it was like people weren't giving me the chance. Now, fair enough, because I get that. Like if that's the way that the patterns of this world have trained us, that yeah, you go for the louder one and the louder ones are more passionate, I get that. So I guess there is a time where first impressions do kind of count, if you hear what I'm saying. But anyway, I'd already learned through my faith journey, don't change who you are, because when I tried to be the louder or whatever Christian before, it was so exhausting. So I learned already, and I knew here, don't change who you are, just be who you are, serve your current clients well, and just let the results speak, let the fruit speak for itself. And sure enough, a year goes by and people started to come my way. One particular lady, she started training with me, and 3 months into our journey, she said, I have a confession to make to you. She said, I saw you a year ago, but because you weren't as loud as these other trainers, I didn't know if you knew what you were doing, so I went to them. But now that I've been with you for 2, nearly 3 months, I've seen more results with you than I did with all my other trainers. And she said to me, that's when I realized, just because people are quiet doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. So that's what I want to say to you. Passion isn't always loud, and loud isn't always passion. So you in your faith journey, you may not be that loud type. You may not be what the box says you have to be in order to be a whatever Christian. And I want to say to you, don't change who you are, and that you can be that quiet one. Maybe you're like me, you're more quiet spoken. You like to have just space and peace and just do things behind the scenes. You must be free to be that. If you're following Jesus when no one is clapping, you are more mature, faithful, and stronger than you know. So like I said, performance Christianity and religion has set up the standard of what the Christian should look like, and many times it looks opposite to the ones in quietness and hiddenness or unassuming. But I want to say to you that you're more faithful, more mature, and more stronger than you know. So don't change to be what that box says you should be. Be who you are in Him. I also wrote this down. Quiet faith seems to be rare in a world of noise. I'll say that again. Quiet faith seems to be rare in a world of noise. I would even say that quiet faith is revolutionary. This is why I love coming to places like this, and this is why for 15 years I've come away into hiddenness, into quietness to be here, because there is something about unplugging from the noise of life, of the world, and just coming into stillness. And this is where I have received just some of the most necessary and impactful wisdom in my journey. Just turning down the noise and just coming and being still with my Father. And I've learned that His voice is often in the quietness. So anyway, passion isn't always loud, and loud isn't always passion. And quiet faith seems to be more rare in a world of noise. So that's the first one. Passion isn't always loud. Secondly, you bring something unique and necessary to the table. So just like my personal training journey, there was something unique. There was value that I could bring to people, and I just had to stay who I was, even if I was overlooked for a while. And so there's something unique that you bring. And I don't want you to trade that to try and be what this box of performance Christianity says you should be, because all it does is that it removes or it overlooks or it begins to bury the goodness that you bring. In fact, Howard Thurman, he says this: don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs are people who come alive. And I would say come alive specifically with the facet of Jesus that they carry. So there is something about your nature and your design that you carry that is so necessary and that humanity is craving for. But if we're trading that for this box of performance Christianity and what religion says a Christian should look like, we only subvert and we only bury the very treasure, the very goodness that many people are desiring and wanting. And so come alive in the person that you are. And so if you are the person who is more quiet by nature and you like to do things in hiddenness and you like to do things behind the scene, be that, own it, because there is something of value that you bring in that makes you come alive. And that's exactly what the world needs, are people who come alive with the facet and unique design of Jesus that they carry. I want to say that you carry treasure that the world forgets to look for. And so, like my personal training journey, I was overlooked, but there was treasure that I carried. Same with you. There is treasure that you carry in this journey with Jesus. There is wisdom, there is substance, there is experience, there are conversations. There are so many people who would value a conversation with you. And there are so many people who would benefit from what you carry. And so the more that you just embrace who you are in that and just settle in that, the more you come alive in that facet of Jesus, and the more goodness you're able to bring to people. So I guess the simplest way to say that is don't change who you are, because you bring something that is very unique and very, very necessary. So be who you are. That's the second one. You bring something unique and necessary to humanity, I'll add. Thirdly and finally, embrace your season. Now, what I mean when I say embrace your season is that in seasons of hiddenness and seasons of openness, let me start it like this. There are seasons of hiddenness and there are seasons of openness. And neither one is better or greater than the other. They are just seasons that are interwoven into all creation and into our journey with Jesus, our spiritual journey as well. So there are seasons of hiddenness and then there are seasons of openness. Now, some of you are in a season of hiddenness, not necessarily because you're quiet by nature. So let me just clear that up. I'm speaking to those of you who are quiet by nature, but I'm also speaking to those of you who are in a time of quietness, of hiddenness. And so there are times when God pulls you into hiddenness. But if we're only ever told about openness, and this is the problem with a lot of performance Christianity and religion, is that we only ever talk about and glorify the openness. And so now we have a whole lot of people who are measuring their journey with Jesus by how well they're in the openness, or how much their journey, their life looks like openness. But what happens if God is calling you into a time of hiddenness, of quietness? And that's where the comparison comes in. That's where the traps come in, the confusion. And now we have a whole lot of people who are trying to force openness when actually God's calling them to a time of hiddenness. And so an example of my journey, this right now, this space here with YouTube and social media, this is a season of openness. But this openness has come from faithfulness to seasons of hiddenness. So let me say that again. The openness I'm experiencing now has come from faithfulness to seasons of hiddenness. So a mentor once said to me years ago that public promotion comes from private battles that nobody else ever sees. And so this openness that I'm experiencing now has come from faithfulness to hiddenness. But I can tell you this, I would much rather live and stay in hiddenness. I love the hiddenness and I prefer to be in the hiddenness. I would prefer that nobody knew my name, that nobody knows my face, and that I live in this place of hiddenness. So let me just define very quickly what hiddenness is. In the place of hiddenness, this is often where a lot of the deep work happens. So this is healing, this is inner reformation, this is pruning, this is cutting away old, this is more formation of the nature of Christ in you. That often happens in the place of hiddenness. And then in the place of openness, that's where it's a celebrating, a revealing, a sharing, an empowering of the hiddenness or the goodness that you've received from hiddenness. So it's an oversimplification, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Hiddenness is often about interchange, deep work. Openness is about sharing that, celebrating that, and empowering others, inviting them into the same goodness that you've received from hiddenness. Now, what I'm seeing today, and this is my concern, is that a lot of performance Christianity and religion, because we've only ever glorified, celebrated, and talked about the openness, we now have a whole lot of believers trying to force the openness. They're trying to gun the openness. Why? Because we've said that's what your faith needs to look like in order to be a quote-unquote good, powerful, strong Christian. And so we have all these people who are trying to force and pursue the openness. And yet God might be calling them into a season of hiddenness. But because it's all we know, we're pursuing this. And one of the reasons I'm convinced why so many people who are in openness are now crumbling and are falling is because they haven't been faithful with the hiddenness. And here's the thing. Hiddenness is always to build you to steward the openness. And this is why I believe people are crumbling. They're crumbling because they haven't built the necessary strength or faith or courage or trust or whatever it is. They haven't built what is necessary to steward this openness. And so now they're crumbling under pressure, or they're crumbling under expectation, or they're crumbling under exhaustion and just that constant performance to try and be that because they haven't understood the power of hiddenness. And so what I mean when I say embrace your season is that if you're in the season of hiddenness, embrace it, because there is goodness in here for you that is to trying to draw out, to form more of the nature of Jesus in you so that you can later steward the upcoming openness, if you understand what I'm saying. And so embrace your season. Now, this is not saying that one is better than the other. Like I said before, there is no divide here. All we're doing is we're learning to walk with our good Father in whatever season He has us in, whether it's in hiddenness or in openness. Doesn't matter what it is. We just walk with Him in that. And so, like I said, because I love the hiddenness so much, it's a wrestle for me to step into openness. It was a long wrestle for me to be here in this way on YouTube, on social media, because I love the hiddenness so much. But I'm here and I'm thankful for it. And so a lot of the messages I'm sharing have come from my hiddenness, my time with Him. And so it's not saying that one is better than the other. It's not and or. Sorry, it's not either or. It's and both. So both are necessary. And there are seasons when He pulls you into openness, and then there are seasons where He invites you into hiddenness. And you must be faithful to walk out both of them with Him. And so this is why the crux of all my messages really is the light and easy yoke of Jesus, because all that means, when I say light and easy yoke, what I'm saying is we're just learning to walk with Jesus. So I'm not doing this stuff for God. I don't do ministry for God. I don't try to be somebody for God. I'm doing everything with God. And when everything just becomes about being with God, and now it doesn't matter whether it's openness or hiddenness, doesn't matter. I'm just walking with God. And so if this season is to walk with God in openness, so be it. I'll be faithful to it. I'm with you, Father. If the next season is about being faithful and He's inviting me into hiddenness, so be it. I'll walk with you. I'll be faithful to it. Thank you, Father. I'm with you. So when you take away these divisions and these separations and you bring it back to the simplicity of just, I'm learning to walk with God, now it becomes a light and easy yoke. It's so much simpler to walk out. And I'm no longer concerned about whether I'm in openness or in hiddenness. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm just with Him. And the best place that you can ever be is with Him. And so that's the third thing that I wanted to say, is that embrace your season, no matter what that looks like. Don't mute your volume to match someone else's volume. Don't mute your volume to match someone else's volume. So what I mean is, don't change hiddenness to try and match somebody else's openness. And don't change openness to try and match somebody else's hiddenness. Be who you are. So that's the third one, embrace your season. So again, those three, passion isn't always loud and loud isn't always passion. Secondly, you bring something unique and necessary to the table. The treasure you carry is often something that the world forgets to look for. And so the more you just embrace who you are, you come alive in that. That's what the world is craving for you to come alive in the facet of Jesus that you carry. And thirdly and finally, embrace your season. Whether you're in openness or hiddenness, embrace it. And you must be free to embrace whatever that looks like for you. So again, if you are the quiet Christian, the obscure one, the one who's in obscurity, the overlooked one, the unassuming one, embrace it. Be it. There is so much power, so much goodness, so much value in what you bring. And even if you are a more louder, outspoken Christian, and you're just simply in a time of hiddenness, embrace it. It doesn't make you lesser. You haven't lost your mojo, so to speak. You're not a lost cause. And if anything, there is some deep building, some goodness going on in here that's going to help you to be faithful and to steward the coming openness. So irrespective of which spaces you stand in there, be faithful to it. Embrace it. And there is so much goodness that we get to enjoy when we learn to simply walk with Jesus. That is basically the crutch of all these messages, is we just learn to walk with Jesus. We remove all the boxes, we take away the divides, and we realize this journey is so much simpler. And when we understand the simplicity of the gospel and the simplicity of Christ, we get to live in the light and easy yoke, and it becomes very, very fun. So, bless you.